Welcome to the Chatter's Box. My name is Kyle McClellan. Thank you so much for joining us on this series of the 1982 World Championship St. Louis Cardinals. And today we're joined with John Stuper, who was a huge part of that team, and especially in Game 6 that we're going to get into the World Series. Stuper, thank you so much for joining us here in the Chatter's Box.
Nice to be here.
This is the 82 series. You had a big role in that year on that team. And do you know my co-host?
We've had occasion to meet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is Dave LaPoint, as Ozzy said. He had a little more accent when he said it, but he was your teammate. Did you know that?
I did know that. Yes.
On the 82 team,
he was. Yes.
Some people on that team claim to not know he was on that team,
and for good reason. But no, David and I were actually roommates in AAA when he came over, and we were just really close friends. He was my closest friend on the team by far. Even though we probably can't be more different. But we had a good time. And, on the 82 team, I think the difference, we had 5 or 6 rookies on the team, but I think the difference is that we listened to the veterans and we tried to learn from the veterans. And, if I have Jim Cott sitting beside me, I'm sure as heck going to listen to what he has to say, or Bruce or Forshee, or, I just thought it made sense to do that. And so they were all great mentors for us. They busted our chops probably worse than anybody. But, Sutter once told me, if I stop busting your chops, then I don't like you. So I kind of took that to heart. So
you're okay that he's co-hosting?
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to dive in. You guys have a unique relationship, and you guys came up really, both as young pitchers and contributed and had major contributions through the postseason run to a part of this 82 championship that we're celebrating this year, the 40-year anniversary. I was a part of the 2011 team. We did our 10-year last year, which was so much fun to see. I can't imagine you guys at 40 years still getting to be back together. The Cardinals that are, put together this weekend for you to get to see everybody again in that room.
It is getting harder to remember what we did way back then.
But I know that's going to be a lot of fun for Cardinals fans and for you guys as well, because for me it was a highlight for my family, for my kids to be a part of that. So I just think it's so cool we get to do it. But I want to dive into that 82 season, and we can talk about your time together before that as well if you'd like. But you didn't come up for a while, right? I
came up, I think, May 29th or something, and started my first game against the Mets on June 1st.
Okay.
It's my first big league start. So I was in AAA, and I the year before I had gone 6-14 in AAA. And David had gone 13-7. And I'm doing the best I can. I'm trying to figure things out. And it just, I was awful.
It was your routine.
It was not my routine, and we're not going to get into that. But so the next year, I thought they might take me off the 40-man after that, but they didn't. And instead of pitching winter ball, I rested that year. I had pitched winter ball the year before in Mexico. And during a calendar year, I had thrown 270 innings. So when I get to AAA that first year, my arm's dead. And I think that contributed a lot to that 6-14 record. But the next year, I didn't play winter ball, very well rested, and went to AAA. Louisville was where it was, and that was the first time Louisville had baseball in like 21 years. I started the opener. And after 8 starts, I was 7-1 with a 1.46. I was leading the league in virtually everything. The Cardinals were 3 games in first place, but one of their starting pitchers, Andy Rincon, was struggling a little bit, so they switched us. And then I got to stay up.
So you go 6-13,
6-14. Don't cheat me on that last
to 7-1. That's got to be a great feeling knowing you're back there, in the same league, essentially, he's in AAA,
right,
trying to fight your way. You're there. Then all of a sudden, the Cardinals recognize that, bring you up for that opportunity. I can only imagine, because I've been there, that mindset then at that point is, I don't want to go back, right?
Absolutely. And, I think David will agree, one of the best teammates I've ever had was Donnie Moore. Just one of the finest people I've ever met. And he took me aside when he heard that I got called up. And he just took me aside, he put his arm around my shoulder, and he said, "Stoop, the same stuff that you're getting guys out with down here will get guys out up there. Don't change anything." And that meant a lot to me because, I was going to be pitching against like Steve Garvey, who I'd watched on TV, and all these guys that I had watched on TV, and I was 25 years old when I was a rookie, and for him to take me aside and say that, he was a veteran big leaguer who was in AAA, and then he ended up going back to the big leagues. But he was one of the best teammates I ever had, and that was one of the reasons. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Oh, there's another thing we have in common, because in '81 in AAA, we played in Wichita, and they had Bobby Bonds, and they had Ed Figueroa, who was the only guy that was in the Vietnam War that pitched in the big leagues. Did you ever know that?
I did not.
So anyways, I'm pitching against Wichita, and we got rained out the night before, went over to the local bar, and we're talking baseball as you normally did back then, and got to know Bobby Bonds a little bit through Donnie Moore. So the next day I'm pitching against Bobby Bonds, and I throw him my changeup, and he runs by the mound after popping it up, and he goes, "You throw that again, I'm going to kill you." And I simply said, "Is this something we can talk about?" And he goes, "I'll meet you in the bullpen after the game." Back then, players did that. They, if you weren't enemies, you could talk to each other. And he said, when I took the ball out of my glove, my fingers were up in the air. No, I didn't. My hand wasn't in my glove. He could see the whole grip. He said, "You either got to lay your fingers on top of that, or you got to keep the ball in your glove, or else you're going to get crushed." And ever since that day, I changed it, and he kind of made my career. But that's the way it was back then. But Donnie Moore was my roommate on the road. We lived together at home, and just had. It was a different bunch of guys, but it was Whitey's way. And, the Daryl Knowles was our rover. They didn't have a separate pitching coach back then. He had a rover to cover AA and AAA. So he was down to earth. Well, they always had down to earth people as a coach. You're going to do better. And they explain it in your terms, and everybody digests information differently. But with the way they did it, they taught it how important it was for your control. If he ever got in trouble, it was because he got wild with his fastball. If I ever got in trouble, I got wild with my off-speed stuff. And actually what happened to me is during the strike, Whitey came down to AAA, and he said, "I hear you got a pretty good changeup." He goes, "Tonight I want you to throw that 70% of the time." And I said, "Whitey, I'm not a real mathematical genius here, but if I throw 100 pitches, you want me to throw 70 changeups?" He goes, "I've already told your catcher, and I'm going to be sitting behind home plate, so you better." And I did, and I had a shutout and had like 13 strikeouts. And he said, "Son, when the strike is over with, you're going to go to the major leagues." So I didn't make it till the next, till September. But stuff like that, little stuff like that they would teach you. And I didn't believe in my changeup, and then he made me throw it. Go ahead to the 1982 season. I faced the Dodgers, go 6 2/3, 96 pitches. I threw 70 changeups.
Wow.
Had 9 strikeouts. So unless he told me. Unless he made me believe in myself, I never would have made it.
Mm-hmm. And I began this by saying how different we are. So how many changeups he threw, that's how many fastballs I threw. So if I threw 100 pitches during a game, I would throw probably 75 fastballs. He'd throw 75 changeups. But a funny story that I think I relayed to you a little earlier was David has the best changeup I've ever seen. Okay, it's unique. I tried to learn it. I've tried to teach it as a coach, and it's next to impossible. I've never known anybody else who holds the ball that way. I don't know how he developed it, but I remember he was talking earlier about we just have to go into the stands the day before we pitched if we're on the road, and we had to chirp people. And I often followed him in the rotation, and I would listen to these advanced scouts in front of me, and they called his changeup everything you can imagine, from a palm ball to a knuckleball to a screwball and I'm just sitting there laughing. And he was pitching against the Mets, and he just dealt. I can't remember. And so after the game, I come in with my chart and whatever, and I say, "Hey, good game," whatever. And he goes, "Hey, Stu, these guys can't hit a changeup. Okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, they can't hit your changeup. My changeup stinks." So we were vastly different that way. I would throw 85% fastballs, especially the first time through the lineup, and then go from there. So that we're very different in many, many ways. Maybe they say opposites attract in men and women, so maybe opposites attracted here too.
So when you come up, everybody talks about Whitey. And his influence on that team and on their careers and whatnot. So you come up as a young player, when you go in, he greets you, welcomes you to the team. What was that like, playing for him? Did he lay out expectation for you? How did he make you feel, and where did you go from there?
I forget what day I got called up, what day of the week, but he, let's say it was Wednesday. He said, "Hey, welcome. You're pitching Friday." Basically, and I heard Ozzie on a former show here about this, saying that he threw rookies into the fire to see, and that's exactly what he did to me. I mean, he just set me out there, and I was in the rotation the rest of the year, and he I guess he trusted me. Now, when the 6th game of the World Series came along, I'll be honest with you, I've milked that game for 40 years. I mean, it's just one game, but he was said in the paper. He said, I would pitch Andujar if I could, but I can't, so I got to pitch him. And I honestly believe that the team got together and had a meeting and without me and said, "You see who he's starting tonight? We need to score some runs." So they scored 13 runs. But it was, I tried to just one of the scouting reports we did get that was valuable, I thought, was we didn't have interleague play then, so they compared every hitter on the Brewers to somebody in the National League, and that really helped me. Like they compared Don Money to Bill Madlock, short, quick stroke, pull hitter or whatever, and that helped me. But never have I been more nervous to start a game. I mean, I felt like the weight of St. Louis was weighing on my shoulders. I had pitched not really well in game 2, even though we won. But it was just, just a perfect storm, so to speak.
That's kind of funny. Knowing you as long as I have, and I remember that game 6 because I'm as nervous as you are.
So I want to set the stage on game 6 real quick for those that are listening that might not understand the how important that game 6 was. You were in the World Series against Milwaukee, who is the heavy favorite coming into this, and you're also down. That's if they win Game 6, they're the World Series champions, right? And this is in St. Louis, correct?
Correct.
So you're here in St. Louis, and you're the starting pitcher as a rookie. And so those that might not know that, just to give a little reference and background of it, that's the Game 6 and the situation you're talking about going into. You end up winning it. We'll go a little deeper into that, winning it, which forces a Game 7 here in St. Louis, which the Cardinals end up winning. But just to give some reference for people listening that might not quite understand what you're talking about, but go ahead, Pointer.
Well, noted being his roommate and knowing, been around in the last 2 years, and to myself, I've never seen him look more secure. That there was just a different look in his eye that day. And even throughout the rain delays in a normal course of a season, if he had a rain delay, he would start to worry about stuff and things enter your mind about how long have I waited? Am I going to be stiff or, the ball's going to be wet, whatever, when I throw him out there. And he never wavered throughout the whole night. Every time you saw him, he still had the same look on his face. And he was bound and determined he was going to finish that game and get us to Game 7. And I think, it was after like the second inning that the security of the dugout just went way up, that they saw he was on. Mm-hmm. And we've seen it all year. When he's on, he's going to be tough to hit, and you saw it in his eyes, and it made a big difference.
So explain let's go into Game 6. Let's talk about that because there was a couple rain delays. I want to get into that, but let's talk about leading up. Let's talk about Game 5. Okay, so what was the situation? What was the scenario in Game 5?
Who
won
Game 5?
They
did
in Milwaukee.
So they okay. So you leave. You come in the clubhouse after that, and you're like, man, we got to win 2 in a row.
Right, and their fans I remember their fans on the way out pounding on our bus, screaming at us and stuff. And I remember Ozzie, a calm voice in the background, in the back of the bus or whatever, going, "Don't they realize we're going to win the next 2 games?" Just very matter-of-factly. I remember him saying that like it was yesterday. And that was just the kind of, veteran leadership that we had. I mean, you have the Gene Tennises and the Jim Cott and Bob Forsch and Bruce Sutter and Doug Bear, and I could go on and on and on. And they were great mentors for us. Doug Bear unfailingly asked me every day before my start, the day before, he asked me if I was scared. He'd look at me, come up to me, "Stup, scared? You scared?" And, that pissed me off. And I'd say, "No, I'm not scared." And he was just, he did a great job. Our bullpen, I've been a coach for 37 years, and I coached at Yale for 30 years. And the hardest thing for any manager is to manage the pitching staff. That's the hardest thing. Anybody can make a case for when you hit and run or when you bunt or whatever, but managing a pitching staff is the toughest thing that you do. And nobody in baseball history has ever been better at it than Whitey Herzog, in my opinion. And I mean, he was just a master at it. He knew, when the guy was done. Can he face this hitter? No, he can't. Let's bring that guy in. And I think David said in an earlier show also that, as starting pitchers, if you went 7 2/3 or whatever, and they came out and asked if you were tired, and you look out in the corner of your eye and you see number 42, warming up, you're like, yeah, I'm a little tired. You should probably take me out. So he was basically automatic, just automatic, and the most dominant reliever at the time, and. I mean, just absolutely automatic. You sat back and relaxed once he came in because you knew the game was over.
Yeah, and him, you're referring to Bruce Sutter.
Bruce Sutter.
As the closer.
Whitey made a mistake one time of coming out public and saying how he uses Bruce. And he goes, if it's a big game, I'll use him up to 7 outs. So if you got, let me see, how many outs are left in this game? And I was lucky when the game that we clinched a pennant in Montreal, he came in with 7 outs left. Mm-hmm. So now you're already in there starting to, where's that champagne going to be at when we do this? But they all had, everything was a confidence booster. That I started in the bullpen, and I was a guy Whitey would put in. If he knew they were going to pinch hit for the left-handed guy, I would face the right-hander, and he knew in my changeup I was better against right-handers. And none of the other scouts could figure this out, but Whitey knew it. So I'd come in to face Willie Stargell. They'd pinch hit Bill Robinson, who I didn't have any trouble with. And even if I gave up a hit or a walk, Bruce was going to come in and face Mike Easler. So I'm not going to give up a run anyway. So I kind of had an easy job. Then we both go into the rotation right about the same time. And then it ended up, funny thing, he stayed solid the whole rest of the year. In the middle of August, we go into New York, and I'm playing cards with the clubbies, and all of a sudden here comes Whitey out of his room. Hey, you mind if I sit down and play a hand with you? I go, oh, man, not now. Not August. I'm going to go down and never see the big leagues again the rest of my life. Like the clubhouse guys are starting to tear up because I'm one of their favorite guys. So he goes, calm down. He goes, I'm not sending you down. He goes, I'm going to take you out of the rotation because you're tired mentally. He goes, everybody's tired physically. You're a little bit tired mentally. It's first year. He goes, let me tell you what we're going to do. He goes, I'm going to put you in the pen here against the Mets, which you do good against. You'll probably face them. And, I'm going to put you in the pen against Pittsburgh. You do good against them. And verbatim said, and you're going to start the game in Montreal when we clinch the pennant. And I pitched against the Mets. I lost the game on a home run to George Foster in the 10th, beat Pittsburgh, and then won the game that we clinched the pennant. And he called it, like it was on paper. He was reading it to me, and boy, I tell you, and everybody heard that story, and everybody, got it. He knows his players, and that's why he's the best. So
I assume when Game 5's happening, you're going to be the Game 6 starter, or you don't know that yet?
Well, Joaquin had gotten injured. He had a ball, I think Teddy Simmons hit it. I'm not sure, but somebody hit, and it hit his leg. And if he could have pitched Game 6, he would have pitched.
Okay.
But he wasn't ready. And so I got the start. And the thing that made it a little more even nerve-wracking was there was an off day. And so on that off day, the reporters had no stories, okay, because there was no games being played. So guess who was the story? I was. So I'm sitting up front, and I'm doing a press conference for like an hour, and they're talking, asking me, hey, what's it like to, face a future Hall of Famer in Don Sutton and, yada, yada. And I just went with it. And then the next day I just tried to block it all out. Like I've told my players over the past 37 years, just block out the noise and concentrate on what you have to do. I was really nervous, but once you know yourself as a pitcher, once you get that first guy out, first couple guys out, then you're fine. Even with a lineup like theirs. And you can make a case, if you look at the stats from that team, the Brewers team, that they might have been the greatest hitting team for 1 year of all time. They had like 4 guys with 100 RBIs, 4 or 5 guys with 30 home runs. I may be off a little bit, but they were a modern day murderer's row. There was no question. There wasn't an out in that lineup. Jim Gantner hit 9th, and he hit 289 on the year. So I mean, it was a formidable lineup. But one of the things that was kind of odd is we didn't know how good defensively they were. They were really good defensively. I mean, you knew Robin Yao, he was probably the best player in the game at the time. You knew he was really good, but Charlie Moore, a converted catcher, was a phenomenal right fielder. And Gorman Thomas, who we didn't really hear that much about. David knew all these guys because he was with Milwaukee. Great center fielder. I mean, they had a lot of great players. I mean, the first two guys in that lineup, 1 and 2, made it to the Hall of Fame. Teddy Simmons was with them then. He's hitting fourth, another Hall of Famer. Cecil Cooper, Hall of Very Good, in my opinion. I mean, that lineup was awesome. And so I just tried to make pitches. And as long as they kept hitting it to Ozzie, I was fine. And I got at one point I retired 14 in a row, and I think 13 of them were ground balls to Ozzie. And I mean, he was phenomenal. I mean, and I heard somebody else say the other day that you're an idiot if you would walk. It's my opinion, as an older guy now, that Ozzie Smith is the greatest defender at any position that our sport has ever seen. And Keith Hernandez might be second. Those two, there is no question in my mind that they are the two best defensive players, shortstop and first baseman, that have ever played. And then you had Obi, who was outstanding at third, really underrated. Never won Gold Gloves because he was with Mike Schmidt was playing at the same time. And Tommy, who was outstanding. So I know David said this before. He thinks that's the greatest defensive infield of all time, and even our outfield. We've talked about how Whitey changed the team to speed. Well, Willie and Lonnie and George got to everything. And so it was a great team to pitch for defensively. I've modeled my teams in college pitching and defense. If you pitch it and catch it, you're always going to be in the game. You're always going to have a chance to win. And that's how Whitey modeled this club to the stadium.
I coach my son's 8-year-old team, and I tell him all the time, try to keep everything to a single. We got a chance. When they start hitting, and at 8 years old, when the ball gets past the outfielder and goes, you got trouble. So you guys didn't have any holes in your defense. I mean,
None.
There is those balls in the gaps are getting tracked down. They are keeping people to singles, and then you guys.
Other pitchers would run by you, from the other team. Go, must be nice.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, it is. It's very nice. Thank you. You don't have this. Yeah. Another thing we had that I think, and I think a lot of people fail to mention is Darryl Porter was our catcher, and we had how many? 6 rookies. 4 of them were pitchers.
Yeah.
Me, you, Lottie, and John Martin, and he wasn't that catcher that was going to get in your face and tell you what to throw. He wasn't Gene Tennis. And he would suggest in his old country way, maybe we ought to try this next pitch, and I think it's going to work. And you're like, okay. And then it would work. And then you would trust him. So he's not a bad type of catcher to have for a bunch of rookies that, instead of being screamed at, like some of the guys do, he was laid back and just let us be ourselves.
And Gene Tennis, you were basically scared to shake off. Anyway, I remember looking in at Gene Tennis, and the game I pitched against Fernando out in Los Angeles, I got to a 3-0 count, and I'm looking in, for the sign, and Tennis doesn't give me a sign. And he just goes like this. And then he told me after, like you were going to throw anything other than a fastball. So that, he was a great. He was one of our leaders. He had been a World Series MVP. He had won 3 World Series in a row. He wasn't going to be nervous. And he was a good guy for us too. I think
he's never been on the losing end in 6 World Series. That's not a bad way to go either.
No.
So Gene Tennis was the hitting coordinator for the Cardinals, and I was in the minor leagues, and I was sitting there my first spring training, and somebody was talking about I was a St. Louis kid and grew up, and I said, yeah. So I used to go down and get autographs, and I said, I'm pretty sure it was I think it was Danny Schaefer, and I said, I'm pretty sure I got your autograph. I think you were the backup catcher in the bullpen, and he lit me up, and Gino thought it was so funny because he was like, backup catcher. He's like, maybe I had a day off that day, and Gino was rolling. He thought it was so funny, and I can only imagine those conversations that happened after I left. But I know Gino from he always smelled good when he came to town, when he came in the
I
Marlies,
don't think we got that close to him.
That's not my biggest memory. My biggest
he
memory.
always had he loaded up the
Threat of
cologne when he
losing
came
your
into
life
town.
meant we weren't going to be that close.
My biggest memory of him was we were playing the Cubs in St. Louis. It was like 130 on the turf. And I remember people milling outside around the clubhouse, and I'm starting that game on the mound, and people going, boy, I guess, I heard Larry Bowa say, well, the pitchers are only going to have to go 3-3-3 today. And that made me mad. I'm like, no, I'm going longer than 3. You kidding me? So Gene Tennis comes up to me and says, hey, Stu, tell you what, if you can go 9 in this weather, I'll buy you dinner anywhere on the road at any restaurant, and I don't care what it costs. I said, cool. So I end up going 8 2/3, okay? And it was like a 3-2 game. Whitey takes me out. Bruce throws one pitch to Kevin Moreland and gets a one-pitch save. So I'm thinking I'm going to go back, and I lost 9 pounds in that game. So I go back to the dugout, and I'm thinking Gino's going to go, hey, Stoop, hey, I'm going to buy you dinner anyway. Great job. Nope. He said, screwed that up, Rook. That was Gene Tennis. So, and that was his pedigree said it all.
Yeah.
And, he had been there and done that, and he taught us how to do that.
Yeah, there's no question.
He's that guy that you have to have on your team, that he's tough and he won't take any crap from the other team. Like if they start chirping a little bit, he's going to be the first guy on the top step saying, you got a problem, look over here. And every team needs that.
That's Chris Carpenter in my time with the Cardinals. Yeah. We were going to get in a fight every year because Chris Carpenter or Tony La Russa. And when those two weren't on the team, we didn't get in a fight that whole year. And it was like, what? We haven't cleared
we
the
had
benches
a chance
anymore.
to get in a fight every 5th day because we had Joaquin Andujar.
Yeah.
That was a different story altogether.
That's
But,
true.
we're is you say in a long season, how long you also have to have guys that take your mind off of what's going on.
Yeah.
And Joaquin was the perfect guy that you never knew what he was going to be like. He was so entertaining the day he pitched.
Mm-hmm.
Joaquin was afraid of snakes. We had snakes, rubber snakes hidden in every part of the clubhouse, and they would drop him off rafters like when he's in a valuable box, and he'd just scare him so bad. But as he said, one tough Dominican. When he pitched, he was one tough Dominican. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how Whitey did it, but I think Hub Kittle was our pitching coach just for Joaquin Andujar, and he's the only one that could control him. And Whitey knew how to control him pretty good, but pitching coach is with him, 4 days, and the manager 1, and he did. And this guy, day in and day out, just 92 on the black, never walking anybody, and just beating people. And he was our rock. We didn't have a 20 home run guy, we didn't have a 20 win guy, but we had Joaquin, and he was a pretty important guy to have in that team.
Yeah.
He used to come into camp, and he was just so proud that he was a size 32 waist, in those little tight uniforms we used to wear. So Buddy Bates would go find a pair of like size 28 pants and then sew a 32 label into them. And Joaquin come in, always late for spring training, and try and pull them pants on, man. He'd be struggling, like pulling muscles. What he'd do? He'd come in spring training too, and he'd run on the field during one of our bunt drills and stuff like that and fire the ball as hard as he could to third base, just about blow his arm out. And he did it on purpose. And then he would go in, and then he was fine for the rest of the year. So I couldn't follow his routine, but man, he could pitch. He was fun to watch.
He also threw BP without a screen. And they knew it was coming. Mm-hmm. I'm like, you're nuts. And speaking of throwing hard, Keith used to get mad because if he got a ball back to him, he'd wait and wait and wait and then throw like a 92-mile-an-hour sinker to Keith. You can ask Keith. I mean, and he just give him a dirty look, but he wouldn't stop.
The worst day of our lives is when he called his home run. Oh my God, we had to live that down.
He wasn't a good hitter.
Jeff Dedman don't wear plaid.
So he wasn't a good hitter, and he thought he was a switch hitter, but he was a natural right-handed hitter. We knew he wasn't a switch hitter. So he gets the other team makes a pitching change, and he's dealing, so Whitey isn't going to take him out. So we start busting his chops. Not me, I was a rookie, but they started busting his chops from the dugout, and he stands, he looks at the dugout, and he goes like this.
I go dip.
Okay. First pitch. He hits a home run left-handed. Oh my God! We couldn't believe it. And of all the guys that did it, it had to be him. So we never heard the end of that.
Love it. So back to Game 6. You start the game, and there's some rain delays, right?
I started. I went 5 scoreless, and then there was a half-hour rain delay, and then I went back out for the 6th. We were winning by 8-0, I think, at the time. Went back out for the 6th, and got 3 outs, and then it started pouring again. And the next rain delay was 2 hours and 19 minutes, which a million people have told me, obviously today that would never happen. I wanted to go back out. I'll be honest with you, for selfish reasons. I had a shutout going in the World Series, and I was a rookie. So selfishly, I wanted to go out. But I also wanted to give the bullpen the night off totally, if I could, for the 7th game. So when I was warming up after the 2 hour and 19-minute delay, I was hurting. But I was able to get loose. To be perfectly honest, when the game got to be like 11-0, 12-0, I don't think the Brewers were up there, really bearing down, which was fine with me. They were looking, how are we going to win tomorrow? So I think I threw 108 pitches in that game, and I blew the shutout in the 9th inning on a wild pitch, and but we ended up winning 13-1, and were able to win the game the next day.
108 regular pitches and 240 warm-up pitches.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the game started at 7 and ended at like 1 o'clock in the morning or something. It was, and again, they did this. MLB did this. I'm sure you've seen it. The 80s Cardinals, and John Goodman, the actor, is narrating it, and they talk about the 6th game, and then they talk about the rain delays, and John Goodman goes, "But it was a different time. And Stuper came back." And I'm like, so, Whitey told me, hey, you got all winter to rest. Keith told me you got all winter to rest. So I'd have fought if they wanted to take me out of that game anyway. So I'd do it in a heartbeat again.
Yeah. Well, I love hearing it. And St. Louis has a tradition of Game 6s in the World Series being pretty special, and yours is a part of that. So awesome to be able to sit down and visit with you. Thank you so much for stepping in the chatter's box and being a part of this. And just congratulations to you and all your teammates on the 40-year anniversary of the 1982 World Championship team with the St. Louis Cardinals. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of this and help share that story with so many generations of Cardinal fans.
It's been a pleasure. I come back here every once in a while, and I always tell people this is, in my opinion, the greatest organization in professional sports. Because I coached at Yale, I've become friends with the owner, Bill DeWitt, who's just as fine a gentleman as you'll ever see. These are the best fans anywhere. I tell people, I come back and they treat me like I'm Bob Gibson. If you've ever seen me pitch, I was no Bob Gibson. And they're amazing. And they're a group of fans that doesn't forget 40 years ago. They may not have seen it because they're too young, like you, but they still appreciate it because it's part of Cardinal history. I couldn't be happier to be part of a family, which this is, the Cardinal family. I mean, doing fantasy camps and stuff, you can just tell. The Cardinals are just different. They do things differently, and that may be snobbish or whatever, but best organization in baseball, best people in baseball. I'm just really, really proud to be a Cardinal.
Well, on behalf of the St. Louis Cardinals, we're glad to have you as a part of the family and a big part of the family, and a huge reason that we have 11 championships. And so we thank you for your time, and thank you for being on the Chatter's Box. And you guys can tune in for one of the other episodes of the 1982 World Championship team here on the St. Louis Cardinals podcast, the Chatter's Box.